Hi! I've been reading a lot in March so far, so there are going to be plenty of reviews today. I'm trying to finish my winter reading list, and there are a bunch that I got through and some that I'm in right now. I'm going to finish in time. I'm hopeful. It does feel like spring today, but I know it's going to get cooler tomorrow, but it feels so nice. It is one of the nicest days in so long, so I am coming alive because of this weather. With these reviews, there are going to be a mixture of variety of books, but there's also going to be a mixture of what my thoughts were. And I need to let you know that some of these I wanted to really, really love, but I don't know if it's just how my mindset was over the past few weeks with all the stuff my family's been going through, that maybe something's been going on in my mind blocking me for a bit to really enjoy some books. But I'm coming out of that now and finding some really amazing books. But I hope that you're getting some reading done. I know it is middle grade March. I hope to read some middle grade this month. We'll see, because I'm focusing so much on finishing the winter list. There will be a couple that I'll get to for the end of March, I'm pretty sure. Let's start with Drake Hall. This one was a pretty good one. It's the second book in the Secrets of the Ormdale series. It's been quite a while since I read the first, but I did remember what went on. If you don't know this story, it's about a family that moves to this area and they find some dragons. I'll just leave it at that. You could always go back to find my review of the first book. For this book though, Edith now, she is visiting Drake Hall. The Drakes are neighbors. In doing so, she's learning about the history of the Drakes, where they come from, what got them into doing what they do. She meets some people. Now, Simon was in the first book, and he's a lot more in this book. In the first book, she pretty much just stared at him, didn't really know what to think about him. And in this one, she actually has conversations. She's getting to know him, and she's realizing that some of her thoughts were wrong. There are a few dragons that get introduced in this story. I really like the idea of the hummingbird seahorse combination dragon. I had never heard of something like that, and I was trying to picture it, and I could come up with it. It was a little difficult, but because I've seen hummingbirds in person, I always thought seahorses were really cute. And to think about these small creatures combined, I was like, okay, that would be unique. There was a quote that was stated by a person, and they said the D word twice in that quote. Otherwise, the content, there is nothing wrong with this story. It was enjoyable. I really need to get to the next books since they're all part of my yearly TBR. Owner of a Lonely Heart. This was one that I've been wanting to read for a couple of years. It is a story about a woman that came over from Vietnam during the war that occurred there. She said that in Vietnam, they call it the American War, and we call it the Vietnam War. So she came over here with her father and her sister and one of her grandmothers. She talks about what it's like living in a part of the country in the 70s where there are loads of white people and what it felt like for her. But most of this book is about her dealing with her mother. Now, her mother stayed in Vietnam and eventually came over, but she lived in a whole different area. She had not seen her mother for years. She didn't even know what she looked like. She was a baby when she came over here. So she always had that question of, how can my mom stay back? Doesn't she care about us? It was like throughout this book, she had her reserves and she became a mother herself. So she was feeling that connection of depth with her children. So she wanted to know how her mother could just not be a part of her life. You could hear her struggles throughout this book. It was pretty sad. A lot of it is like her going through waves, talking like back and forth. So it's a little repetitive at times. It wasn't a bad story. It just wasn't one. I've read other books that are similar, but they were written a lot better. But this wasn't written poorly. It's just, I don't know. Again, like this season that I'm in, it was just an odd time for me to read books. The content in this, there were 5 uses of the Lord's name in vain. While it is relatively clean, there is a story where she was in college and led this guy as a practical joke with her friends to this area and starts to undress him as if she was going to do something with him. Then she leaves. The way she writes this, it's a little bit much how she describes it, and I was like, do I need to stop reading this and skip? But then it stopped, so I was like, okay, cool. And she also talks about some domestic violence. This was a letdown. I had been looking forward to this one for the year. I made a list of books that my best friend, who died after giving birth a few days later after her 7th baby. So anyway, she had a bunch of books she used to talk to me about. We would go back and forth. I made a list of books that she read that she really enjoyed, and this was one of them. She was a Christian. I think that her idea of some of the things she would read were a little bit different than mine. And I've had this happen now a couple times. This one is one of those that I can't recommend this. The story was a little odd. Honor Bright, she's a Quaker woman from England. She comes over to the US to live with her sister, who was also with her moving over. Her sister was going to marry someone that had come from their community and now lives in Ohio. So on the journey, they go there. There is a sickness that happens. So there is talk about sickness throughout this book. She ends up going to Ohio. She doesn't really know anyone except for this man that her sister is to marry. And when she's there, she meets a guy that's looking for runaway slaves. So this is set before the Civil War, pretty much right before it. So Honor, she starts to make friends with a woman that's making bonnets. And as a Quaker, she's very plain. The woman is very forceful, like, you're gonna help me. And so she's, sewing. She makes quilts and she's really good at it. And so she makes friends with her, eventually moves in with the people of the Quaker community in that area. But while she's there, she starts to see a lot of runaway slaves because she is taught to love her neighbor as herself. And she's starting to see how there are so many people that are for slavery in this area, but also there are the Quakers that they like don't really want to do anything, even though they're against slavery. And that bothers her. So she wants to do something about it. So she starts trying to figure out ways to hide slaves. So this is the great part of this book. The bad parts of this book is that eventually she has a relationship herself with one of the Quakers, but she's like back and forth, even when she's married, about some other character. And that really doesn't sound typical for a Quaker woman. It just sounded very off, especially because she had pretty high morals compared to like a lot of them. So I don't really like where this was going with that she was confused between men even when married. There is a sex scene that I had to skip over, and I don't even know, it took like 2 pages before I'm like, okay, when's this end? So that bothered me. There is terminology of racism towards the people that were slaves at that time. There is drinking and drunkenness. As much as I really thought that this had potential, it was a bit of a dud. When Breaks the Dawn in the When Calls the Heart series, or as this is called, the Canadian West series. If you watch the When Calls the Heart show, the show is like nothing to do with the books, honestly. There's like little pieces they take from it, and then they just like are going off with their own thing the whole time. So I really have enjoyed reading these books. Pretty sure this is the 3rd book in the series. This was a very heavy story. Of course, I read this during a heavy season, but it was very well written. Elizabeth, throughout this story, she really wants to have a baby. There are people all around her having babies. And so this is very much, if this is a problem, if you have infertility issues like she has throughout the story, it is just so sad. And then there's even times where she takes in other people's children for a time, and it's heartbreaking because she gets attached to these children. There's a scene where she breaks down and cries out to God, and it is so raw and so beautiful. I thought that was just so amazing because she's learning to put her trust in him, starting to want to go by other measures, to like go to maybe a witch doctor that's known because she's so desperate, instead of saying, hey, no, there are people in the Bible that struggled with this. I need to trust in God. On a lighter note, I did read the 2nd book from the Betsy Tacy series. This is Betsy, Tacy, and Tib. These books are based off of the author's actual experiences with her closest friends, but she does put some fictionalized parts in it. They're really adorable, and it's just, some of the things these girls do, I was like, no, don't do it, please don't. And other times you're like, oh, that's so sweet. So at the end of the 1st book, they make a friend named Tib, and they're all like 5 in that book. This one, they're like 8, 9. And it's cute because they hang out on this hill all the time. They talk about God, and they even form their own little group about trying to do good, but in doing good, they find themselves realizing that they want to do bad so they can be good. And so it's very funny, but like sad too. They go on picnics. They have great imaginations. So if you like something a little lighthearted, this is a very cute story. This one was really fast. I felt like the first one was longer. I do have the 3rd book that I hope to get to very soon that's on my Nook. Stardust and Silence. This was a jar pick from my son, and I got to it pretty quickly, and I got through it very quickly. It starts off with Lyra, who is 13 years old. There is a big celebration that her family really loves. Her family are pirates in space. So they're floating around up there. Her mother is the pirate queen. I guess that makes her dad the pirate king. She is treated like a princess of sorts, but like rebellious princess, but they're like good pirates where they don't really like to do wrong. They want to help people, which is funny because I, for years and years and years, was known as the Justice Pirate because I like to seek justice for the oppressed. And I have a tattoo of the Jolly Roger flag. I know. I was only 21 when I got this. Anyway, so I love pirate stories. Okay. When I heard pirates in space, I'm like, it's a pirate story. I have to read it. Oh boy. And mermaids, I have mermaid hair. So I was like, mermaids and pirates. Okay, let's go for it. So these are mer people that are in space. So it's like they float around as if the space is the ocean. It's very interesting to think about. These mer people, they have dark blue skin that's all shimmering like the stars. So Lyra, when she's 13, she gets these presents, including a really cute fox creature that has 2 different color eyes. And the fox is like pretty much these colors that you see on this cover. It's so sweet. I want one. The Celestari, they are the mer people, and they are like legends and tales that they've heard about, but they don't think that any of them exist. But when Lyra, she ends up floating in space, which is like my biggest fear ever, honestly, my greatest fear. So she can't breathe in space, and mer people can't breathe on these ships. That's what I gathered from this, but I don't know like how long it takes before they lose oxygen because they don't have anything that they wear for protection. She gets saved by a Celestari when she's 13 and he is near her age. They have like this weird connection. They really just like felt comfort in each other's presence, and they introduced themselves to one another. Then 22 years pass. So this is a Little Mermaid retelling, but gender swapped. To me, it was like Peter Pan in a way mixed with Little Mermaid, but I guess not because there's no lost boys or anything like that. The Celestari, now they do believe deeply in the creator, and this is supposed to be God, but they talk about the creator. She also believes in the creator. So this is something without like saying right out God, and they depend on him to guide their path. But there's also this deep connection, kind of like in Twilight series with the imprinting that was done. It's like he senses that there is supposed to be someone that he is supposed to meet, and he senses that with her, which has never happened before. It's never before happened with a human, but he knows he had that. So he wants to do whatever he can. And you know how Ariel in The Little Mermaid, this is more based off of the Disney version, by the way, not the actual story. It is a very depressing story, so I understand. There is a group of people called the Voiceless, and so he kind of gets transformed to this voiceless person, you know, with legs. And he has his 3 days where he has to get a kiss from Lyra. Oh, his name is Valian. He's cursed by the Witch King, so you know it's Ursula. Just so if you know this story, that's how it goes. But anyway, so it's supposed to be about their journey of discovering one another. And my problem with the Little Mermaid story has always been that they don't have really a way to communicate. They don't really interact in a way that she gets to know who he is or anything about him, but he gets to know more about her. So it bothers me because I feel like she didn't have that depth, but he was like instantly so into her. And it was a little creepy at times for me to read, but it was also so beautifully written. The whole story is just so magical and so lyrical. And it was just, I really enjoyed the writing a lot. So yes, his person, by the way, they call it a resonance. I think that was it. Resonance. I think it's resonance. One of those, like, so that's what he calls her. She's my resonance. The Celestari are very into music and they sing a lot. So without his voice, it's very hard for him. Now, she gets into a lot of trouble. There's something that happens with the political situation of the pirates, and it's devastating. So now she's kind of an outlaw, but she also has been trying to find this well. There's star maps, and it was very unique. It was like a romantic sci-fi fantasy novel. It was fun. By the way, I bought this from her website directly, and she wrapped it so beautifully, and she put a bookmark in it. She even hand wrote a note that was like long, and it was lovely. That was just really nice. For content, there are these space fights with weapons and fists. There is an attempted murder. There is a murder. There is stealing and theft. So there's a lot of violence. I was taken aback by that at times. In Unexpected Grace, this is the 3rd book in the Jewels of Kalispell series. I have been reading this for a couple years now, this series, and I don't know what took me so long to get to this one. I should have gotten to it because this was probably my favorite of the series. I really enjoyed it. It was written perfectly. So Kalispell is a town. There are always in these books, there is a judge and his wife, Marvella, and they even have a little dog. And they're in all three stories, but there are like minor characters that are always helping out. And I like how they have them in this as well. But you don't have the people really from the other books that show up in this, but they do at the end. So I liked how they put them in there, like they slid them in there. So this is about an engaged couple. They're very young. They grew up together. They love each other. They're going to get married. But then the guy, Parker, he drops a bomb. He's like, so you know how I've always said I want to be a preacher and you've always wanted to marry a preacher? Well, I want to be an actor instead. Now this is set in the early 1900s, around 1920s. You figure when it's like theater time, going into the movies when it's the silent films. But he's going on the stage before all the movie stuff gets to be crazed. She's heartbroken. She's like, well, how dare you put this on me? And he's like, no, we can make it work. I still love you. She's like, I can't marry you. And I was like, wow, that's like, they can't work things out. It was so sad. So then several years pass. She had been married, she had a child, and now she's a widow. This is right at the beginning of the book. This is not telling you like a spoiler. So her name is Johanna. So she's trying to raise her daughter with the help of her father, and she's struggling financially. She works at her own shop doing bonnets, which is funny because I had like 2 bonnet stories. I was reading both of these at the same time. So I was like, oh, women making bonnets. That's so interesting. So Parker's been away for a while and he becomes this star. And now he comes home to Kalispell to put on some shows. And there's even this other actress who's French. She is weaving her way in there. But the main part of this story is that Johanna's brother-in-law, he is trying to gain a fortune from his father, and the fortune had been left to her without her knowing. And so he's mad. So now he's trying to lure her in to try to get her to marry him. He is trying to smooth his way. Now he is so crazy, so forceful, so manipulative, so controlling, using his charms to get the trust of people. And throughout this, you have Parker and Johanna trying to reconnect as friends and what that looks like for them after all these years. Like I said, it was so well written. I really liked the sense of adventure in this at times and the depth of the relationship that is forming and their connection with God. This is a Christian historical fiction book and it is very lovely. This whole series, I really enjoyed it, but this one especially was great. So for content reasons, there is a man, like I said, willing to hurt other people. He'll do whatever he can to get it. So that could be through violence. There's deceit, threats, there are even kidnappings. There's even an attempted suicide at one point. Death is mentioned several times in this. There's even a woman that tries to lure someone in with her charms, but there is resisting temptation. This is very clean. There's also someone that throws up in this if that bothers you. Yes, a delightful story. Oath of the Brotherhood. I thought this was a very well-written story, but I have one extremely major problem with this book, and that is there is a lot of Gaelic, or as some people say Gaelic, it's Gaelic, throughout this, and they have a glossary at the back so you can understand how to pronounce it. So many words. The glossary is huge, guys, and it's like really small print. So that made it really troublesome because there are so many places mentioned throughout this, so many people's names. And then I'm like, okay, I got to really stick this in my head. And I keep going back and I'm like, yeah, okay, right. I can't handle it, guys. And that made me not enjoy this book because if I'm constantly having to think and look through instead of just enjoying the story, if they had like a couple names of places and if they had some okay, easy to understand names and then like a couple that are a little harder, fine. But this was like throughout it constantly, so many. Anyway, let me tell you what this story is about. So this is a fantasy story, by the way. It is definitely very much set around the Celtic lore and things with druids and stuff like that. Very Irish story, but it's not set in Ireland. It's its own place with its own creative stuff, but it's totally Ireland. You have all these Irish names. Connor's a prince. He believes in God, but it's not pronounced as God. Let me try to pronounce this for you. Comdiu. Balas is Jesus. Throughout it, they talk about God and Jesus in these other names. At first, I'm like, what? This is like an idol. This is a God. And then I looked at the glossary and it actually says God. And oh, it's just their version of saying God. Okay, I get it. So I was just confused. Oh, I'm like reading about druids. I'm like, okay, so druids are very much like into magic, alchemy, and dark magic and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, you got these priest guys. Connor's people, they're believers of God, and they are starting to be hunted down. They don't want the people in the areas don't really want people to believe in God, so they're being killed for their faith. So Connor goes to this other kingdom for protection because all of the people are being destroyed. In this one kingdom, it's pretty calm. It's pretty much okay. There's like a mixture. It's like a safe place. The king is very nice to him. He meets all the siblings there, and one of the siblings is Anya, also not spelled the way you would say Anya. That one I realized early on how to pronounce her name. So they become really good friends. Months pass. They're learning things together. He has this gift for music, and she has this gift for healing. And so they say these gifts are from God. It's kind of like magic, though. It's like God giving them magical talent. And so they use it in different forms to help people. But Connor, he also needs to learn how to sword fight. So he learns there. But then because there's more threats and problems, he has to find somewhere else that's safe. So he goes to this other place to find safety. So the whole story is about them being separated, these two characters, for a few years, and what that's like for them to live doing their things with their gifts and strengthening up while this druid is causing lots of damage and problems. So I thought that the story was okay. I did want to keep knowing more. There are 2 other books in this series. I'm not going to continue this series. Like I said, I think it was in a weird time when I read this, and it was just too much on me. I wanted to read like an Irish book. This was my Irish book for the month of March. For content, there are demons mentioned in magic. There's violence and murder. There's sword fighting. Got confused because there was a part where this guy is starting to undo a bodice of a woman, and they say it like fell, and the way they made it seem, I thought she was naked, but no, she had like a nightgown on. So she was dressed, it's just she was constrained from wetness, from being in water. And so the bodice was just too much. So anyway, he helped remove that like a corset. So at first I was like, what's going on? It was not in a sexual matter at all. It's mainly to help save her. So that's the only content really that you would have to worry about. A little bit disappointing, that book. I was looking forward to it. I had this book since January, and I was like, March is coming. I'm gonna read it in March. I read it in March. I will say it's like kind of like Frank Peretti. If you've read This Present Darkness, it's very much like that. You could see the spiritual battles going on. The Joy of Doing Nothing. This was also picked from The Jar by my son Leto. This was boring as can be. I'm so sorry. I didn't enjoy it. I fell asleep a lot while reading this. If I fall asleep with a book, I'm not gonna like it. But I pushed through because I was like, well, it is about slow living, and I really I'm someone that lives slow living, and as a minimalist, that's just like how I am. That's how I'm able to read so many books, because I'm into getting things done early in the day, and then I could just relax pretty much the rest of the day. So this is about having that joy, but the way that this author describes things is very odd. So she is a minimalist. She was like going back and forth with things like, oh, you shouldn't work so hard at your job. And I'm like, yes, you should, and she's like, ask your boss for time differences where you can maybe go in early but leave early, and sometimes where you could sit and relax while on the job. I'm like, no, get your work done. But then she also was like telling you how if you don't like to do chores, just don't do them. But then she's trying to give you advice for how to do chores. So I'm like, which is it? So it was just confusing. I probably should have given up on this book. And another book that I read at the worst time, honestly, Northanger Abbey. I really had been looking forward to this too. Me trying to get through the Jane Austen books every once in a while. I have so many that I love, but this one, I don't know, like the idea behind it was nice. Okay, so Jane Austen, apparently she didn't go to get this published. This was like her first book. I guess she wasn't satisfied with it, so she never published it. But after her death, it was found and published. So to me, I'm thinking like, why would you publish something I didn't want published, or that I didn't really care that greatly about, So maybe that's part of why I don't like this. Maybe I was thinking in terms of like when I write something, or if I do something or create something, I look back and I'm like, it was one of my first things. It was okay. At least I learned from it. I feel like that's what this was. Some people adore this book, and that's great. I'm very glad that you have found joy in this book. I wanted to. This was supposed to have satire. Maybe I didn't sense it enough. This was like reading a lot of gossip. This is supposed to be a gothic tale. I didn't really sense that, honestly. Like when you read Jane Eyre, it has a little bit of that mysterious stuff. When you read Rebecca, it's got that. But this one, I was like, wait, this is supposed to be a gothic tale. So anyway, Catherine, she goes to Bath. She doesn't really know anyone, and she goes to this ball, and she's starting to learn about people. She makes some friends. She learns like who's who, and that's like part of the gossip. Like, oh, this person falls for this person falls for that person, and this person's not really that great of a person, and oh, this person is a little flighty and flirting with people and going back and forth. Do they really like this person? I don't know, maybe it was a little too much gossip for me. But she does meet Henry Tilney. They form I don't know if it would be like an instant love or if it's just they form a bond pretty early on. And she's invited to the Tilneys, and she thinks it's like a really great thing. Now she reads lots and lots of books, including some gothic literature. And so she's like, ooh, what secrets do we have here? So she's kind of like going around trying to find all these secrets. She has her own ideas about what things are, and without asking right out, what is this? So she has these thoughts. She's not getting facts. It's all in her imagination. And I'm just like, it's very sweet. She is a naive young woman. Very adorable, I guess. Just know that everything turns out okay at the end. Yeah, I know, it was just odd to me. There's nothing that really stood out about this story for me, I guess. I don't know. It's funny too, because my sister-in-law, her name was also Catherine, but spelled with a K, not a C, like the story had a C. And for all I know, my sister-in-law probably loved this book. She loved all the Jane Austen books. So I was thinking a bit about her while reading this, and maybe that was part of the problem. I was like not in the right mindset. She just passed away. We tried to connect on books once in a while, and it was, I don't know. I have nothing to say. I'm going to go on to the next book because it's my favorite that I've read so far this month. So it is March 11 today, and I read all of these books in March. I know, it's insane that I read all of these. I didn't think I would have the time to, but I got sucked into some, and others I had to push through. I feel like it was to keep my mind busy, I guess, from a slight grief. I read this. I finished this yesterday. It was incredible. This is the 7th volume from the Emma M. Lyon series. If you don't know this series, a lot of people complain about the first book. I keep seeing it, especially if people listen to the audio version. I don't recommend the audio version. I haven't listened to them, but because these are journal entries, you can't really get much verbally from just hearing journal entries. When you see journal entries, I feel like it's better. I don't know, because I haven't listened, like I said. So the first book was like an average one for me. This book was my favorite. The third book I thought was my favorite, but no, this one is my favorite now. And I still have the 8th book, and then the 9th one is coming out later. So Emma M. Lyon, she writes her journal entries. This one marks a year of journal writing. So if you don't really care that much for the first book, it's because we're just building up. Like if you base your life off of 2 months of your life, things are just starting, right? And you gotta get to know characters over time. And she totally, the way this is written, it was so gorgeous. I even read a couple pages to my husband last night because I was like, listen to this. And he was like, that is really pretty. I laughed out loud for parts of this. I don't do that hardly ever when I read books. I cried. I smiled so many times. Like I even went, like out loud. So Emma, now she has been living in this house in Lapis Lazuli is the name of her house. She interacts with people. There are 3 men that she becomes very good friends with. She has female friends that are a lot in this actually. Like you're like, where are her female friends when you read some of the first ones? But they're in here. They are in some of the other books here and there, but definitely like I feel like you get more of her female friends in this. When I'm learning about the characters, the main people, you have Duke Islington. They've been friends for a very long time. To me, they are like listening to siblings banter sometimes, but they get along. They have their times. They enjoy each other's company. There's Hawkes, who is the vicar. And so he preaches, but he also is like a little rebellious in ways, but he's also very observant and he's mysterious. And I really think like you start to realize part of why he's friends with Emma in this one. I feel like a little reveal about Hawkes in this of why he treats Emma the way he does. And then there's Pierce, and he is a photographer of war. He's seen a lot of war, and his interactions with Emma are just amazing. They're funny. They write notes to each other they live in a garret that's split in the house, and they write notes like through like a closet that's conjoined with like a piece of the closet that's like heightened, so they can like and it's just so funny. It's hard to talk about this without giving anything away, and I will not give things away. There are some strange situations. Right off, when we start this one, There are these people called the Reprobates 10. They are a group of very high-strung young men who have like their own club, and they cause a lot of trouble. They get Emma caught up in it too a little bit, and Hawks is involved with that. And man, there is something crazy. As soon as I started reading this, I was like, what? It's insane, like how this book starts off and you're like, what is going on? That's just crazy. You gotta stop that. So yeah, there's always something that Emma gets involved with that causes problems. And then there are other problems that happen in this book that make instances of being caught in different ways where she's like, no, or she's like, okay, like, I guess, what do we do with this? You know, like, but it's extremely clean, just so you know. There's nothing to worry about. This is a delightful story. This book is mainly about friendship, but there is a budding romance that we got mainly in books 6 and 7. So I'm just going to let you know, if you're like looking for romance in the first book, you will not find it. You will find things are just starting. With this one, it's good. There is deception that takes place in this because Emma, she's like really hiding some things. She's just trying to live her life. She's suffered some grief in her life. You know, she's trying to live it, but she's a lovely lady. She doesn't do anything that's really bad. She just gets into scrapes. There are characters in this I don't like. There are characters in this I love. There are characters I'm like, oh, I need more and more, and I want to hear more. I want to know what's going on. And Emma even, like, she's starting to uncover things like, who's this? Like, two of the characters in here, it seems like they're starting to have their own love lives, and she's like trying to figure out like what's going on. And then another one, you know, so she's trying to figure things out. So yes, it's very, very wholesome. The way she writes is so, I feel every time I read this, I feel like I'm reading Jane Austen's writing almost, but this is a brand new book series, guys. That's how amazing. This is written like it's a classic. And the way in near the end, one of the chapters, it's just written so amazingly. Like two of the characters, the way they interact and they talk so honestly about their feelings. And I love that because in so many of these books, we don't get that. We get them like going around and thinking things, but they don't ask outright. And so here they're like, so what do we do with this? Where are we in this? How do we feel about this? And I'm like, yes, let it be known instead of just like, I don't know, maybe this. I love it. They learn to trust each other too. So it was so delightful, so beautiful. For content, there are usages of the D word and one misuse of the word hell. There's violent scenes in this. There are injuries in this. So this one was a little more intense, but it was also amazing. That was a long review video. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you guys. And I'm not going to do a TBR jar because I have a little pile on my nightstand of books that I've been wanting to read the entire year coming. And so when I finish my winter books, I'm going to focus on some of those books that I have physical copies of. We're going to get them done. As I read them, I will take some of these out of the TBR jar and I'll do the jar next time for sure. But this is so long. Anyway, thanks guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather if it's nice by you. I'm going to go enjoy the weather now. So my reading is going to slow down because once it gets warm, I'm an outdoor person. Hibernation season is done. Bye.